Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are delighted to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. The mornings in Miami always carry the scent of the ocean. Adrian stood on the balcony of his apartment, gazing at the sparkling sea in the distance, the steam from his coffee slowly dissipating in the morning breeze. At 35, he had been living in this coastal city for 10 years and knew every tidal change like the back of his hand. As a marine engineer, his career had been dedicated to protecting the waters he loved so deeply. Daydreaming again? Natalie's voice came from behind, carrying a hint of impatience that was barely noticeable. Adrian turned to look at his fiancée. Natalie wore an elegantly tailored white suit, her golden brown hair perfectly draped over her shoulders, adorned with the pearl necklace he had given her last year. As the marketing director for a high-end real estate company, she always maintained an impeccable professional image. Just thinking about today's tidal data, Adrian smiled. The breakwater design for the Fleming project needs adjustments. Natalie elegantly raised an eyebrow, quickly glancing at her watch. Sounds fascinating, darling. But I have an important client meeting today and might have to work late. She picked up her car keys from the table and lightly kissed Adrian's cheek. Don't wait up for dinner. Adrian watched her leave, feeling an inexplicable sense of unease rising within him. This was already the fourth important client meeting this month. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought. 5 years together, 2 years engaged. Their trust shouldn't be shaken by baseless suspicions. The Coastal Protection Research Center was Adrian's workplace. It was a 3-story building that blended modern design with environmental principles, using plenty of glass and sustainable materials to allow sunlight to flood in. Adrian's office walls were covered with coastline maps and models of flood prevention projects he had designed. This month's data shows the red tide is spreading, his colleague Thomas said during lunch, especially near the new development by Golden Beach. Adrian nodded, his brow furrowing slightly. Someone's breaking ground in the wrong place. I've submitted my concerns to the Environmental Bureau, but they say there's insufficient evidence. Are you referring to Apex Real Estate's luxury community project? Thomas took a bite of his sandwich. Their PR is excellent. Environmental promises everywhere, sponsoring several marine conservation activities. Adrian looked up. Apex Real Estate? Are you sure? Yeah, that hot developer that's everywhere lately. Their ads are all over the place. Their CEO is some European guy, Victor something. Adrian felt a slight dizziness. Wasn't the important client Natalie had been frequently mentioning also named Victor? He forced himself to stay calm. It could just be a coincidence. Miami's real estate world wasn't that big, and clients sharing names was perfectly normal. The evening sunlight made the entire building glow. He stopped at the roadside, suddenly feeling that his behavior was somewhat ridiculous. However, just as he was about to start the car and leave, a scene made his fingers freeze on the steering wheel. Natalie walked out of the main entrance with a tall man. The man appeared to be in his early 40s, wearing a tailored dark blue suit, exuding an innate elegance and authority with every gesture. What made Adrian's heart race faster was seeing the man naturally place his hand on Natalie's waist, guiding her toward a black Bentley parked at the curb. Before they got into the car, the man leaned down and whispered something in Natalie's ear, making her throw her head back in laughter. That relaxed, intimate posture was something Adrian hadn't seen on her face in a long time. Adrian felt nauseated, but he forced himself not to act rashly. Maybe this was just normal business contact. Europeans were more tactile in their social interactions, he told himself. Over the next few weeks, Adrian began to notice certain details, both intentionally and unintentionally. Natalie's overtime became more frequent, and unfamiliar high-end venues began appearing in her social media check-ins. Twice, industry seminars she claimed to be attending didn't actually exist, as Adrian discovered through friends. More noticeably, her attitude toward him was subtly changing. More criticism, less praise. Haven't you ever thought about changing jobs? Natalie suddenly asked one weekend morning while flipping through a magazine. Adrian put down the journal he was reading. Why do you ask? I just think someone as smart as you is wasting away in that research institute. Private companies offer much better salaries and prospects. She shrugged nonchalantly. Environmental protection is important, but you can't be the only one fighting, can you? Adrian felt a subtle sting. I thought you understood the significance of my work. Understand? Of course. Natalie put down her magazine, a faint, ambiguous smile playing on her lips. But understanding doesn't equal appreciation, Adrian. Look at where we live, your car, my wardrobe. After 5 years, our lives haven't seen any qualitative leap. That conversation planted a seed in Adrian's mind, taking root and sprouting. In the days that followed, he began piecing together clues, quietly seeking the truth. He didn't invade Natalie's privacy, didn't check her phone or computer. That wasn't his style. Instead, he focused on publicly visible information, unintentional revelations from friends, and changes in Natalie's behavioral patterns. The truth came faster than he had imagined. One Thursday evening, Adrian received an email. The sender was Thomas, and the content was simple. You might want to see this. The attachment was a set of photos taken at an environmental charity gala last weekend, an event Adrian had missed due to a project deadline. In the photos, Natalie wore a red evening gown he had never seen before, on the arm of the man named Victor, the two displaying an intimacy that went beyond ordinary business relationships amid the clinking of glasses. In the final photo, they were kissing on a balcony, with Miami's nightscape as a backdrop, silently witnessing this moment of betrayal. Adrian stared at the screen for a long time, feeling a cold numbness spreading from his spine throughout his body. He didn't shout, didn't throw things, didn't even cry. As someone accustomed to analyzing data and solving problems, his first reaction was to confirm the authenticity of this information and decide what to do next. He went to his place, the beach. Sitting on the sand, watching the tide ebb and flow, he began mentally reviewing every detail of their relationship. 5 years ago, they had met at a marine conservation event. Back then, Natalie was just entering the real estate industry with a genuine passion for environmental causes. She admired Adrian's expertise and love for the ocean, while he was attracted to her energy and intelligence. 2 years ago, during a diving trip, Adrian proposed, and Natalie happily accepted. Everything seemed so perfect. But when did things begin to change? Adrian tried to recall. Perhaps it was after Natalie's promotion last year, when she began dealing with more high-end clients, broadening her horizons and ambitions. Maybe it was when she started frequenting those luxury yacht parties and private clubs, gradually being drawn to a completely different lifestyle. A wave crashed against the shore, the splash of water startling Adrian from his thoughts. He took out his phone and began searching for information about Victor and Apex Real Estate. Victor Reinhardt, European-American, founder and CEO of Apex Real Estate Development Company, known in the industry for bold, innovative designs and high-end projects. In recent years, the company had been aggressively expanding luxury residential projects along Miami's coastline, flying the banner of eco-friendly development. Adrian continued his search, quickly finding some interesting information. Victor's company had faced environmental controversies in other regions before, but they had all been cleverly managed through public relations. More importantly, the Golden Beach project that Apex was currently developing was exactly in the area of red tide spread that Thomas had mentioned. Adrian's heart began to race. This wasn't just an issue of personal betrayal. It could involve a larger environmental crisis. He needed more evidence, but first, he needed to confront Natalie. In the early evening, Adrian returned home to find Natalie already there, on the phone. Seeing him, she seemed surprised and quickly ended the call. "You didn't go to work today?" she asked, with a hint of unnaturalness in her tone. "Took a day off. Needed to think about some things," Adrian said calmly. "What about you?" "No overtime today." Natalie put down her phone, looking at him alertly. "Just came back to get some documents." "What's wrong, Adrian? You don't seem right." Adrian took a deep breath and directly showed her the photos. "What is this, Natalie?" Natalie's face instantly turned pale, but she quickly regained her composure. She took the phone, quickly browsed through the photos, then looked up, a coldness Adrian had never seen before flickering in her eyes. "So you're spying on me?" she countered, her voice low and dangerous. "No, these were taken by a friend at a public event." Adrian struggled to remain calm. "I want to know the truth, Natalie. What exactly is your relationship with Victor?" An uncomfortable silence followed. "Do you really want to know?" Natalie finally spoke, a sense of relief in her voice. "Fine. Victor is my client, and also my lover. For 3 months now." Despite having suspected it, this direct admission still hit Adrian like a heavy blow to the chest. "Why? was all he could manage. Natalie put down the phone, gracefully sat on the couch, as if discussing the weather. Why? Adrian, look at yourself, then look at Victor. A science geek who spends all day in a lab studying algae and fish versus a successful businessman with real estate empires across the globe. You drive a 10-year-old car. He has a private helicopter. You put all your energy into oceans that will never repay you, while he knows how to enjoy life and how to let those around him enjoy the best of everything. What about our 5 years together? Our wedding plans? Adrian felt dizzy. Natalie laughed scornfully. Our relationship? Adrian, when was the last time you took me on a date somewhere that wasn't the beach? When was the last time you asked how my day went, instead of talking about your work? She stood up and walked to the window. There hasn't been any passion between us for a long time. You were just too focused on your coral reefs to notice. Adrian felt a surge of anger. So this is my fault? Because I work hard? Because I care about the environment? Not entirely. Natalie turned to face him directly. It's because you're content with mediocrity. Victor gave me everything I wanted: recognition, excitement, social status. He understands what a woman needs. And that's your reason for betraying me? Adrian shook his head in disbelief. Natalie shrugged. I guess I needed a real man, Adrian. Money, power, looks. Victor has all of these, and you don't. Her voice was cold and direct. To be honest, I don't regret it. Adrian stood there, feeling as if the entire world was collapsing. He thought of their mutual friends, who also seemed to have been distancing themselves from him lately. Do our friends know about this? Some do, Natalie said indifferently. They understand me, Adrian. Victor has introduced me to an entirely new social circle. At recent parties, our old friends have really taken to him. Adrian felt an unprecedented loneliness. Not just his fiancée's betrayal, but the distancing of friends. The entire social network he thought was solid turned out to be so fragile. I need some time, he finally said, his voice so calm it felt strange even to himself. Suit yourself. Natalie picked up her handbag. I won't be coming back tonight. You can think about your issues. Maybe this is a turning point for both of us, Adrian. You can find someone more suitable for you. And she deliberately paused. I already have. Adrian watched her prepare to leave, then suddenly remembered another question. What's going on with the Golden Beach project, Natalie? The environmental impact assessment there is problematic, and the red tide is spreading. Does Victor's company know about this? Natalie stopped, turned to look at him, a flash of barely noticeable panic in her eyes, quickly replaced by mockery. Here we go again, environmental warrior Adrian. Is that all you care about? Even at a moment like this, you're still thinking about your ocean. Answer my question, Natalie. Trade secret, darling. She gave a fake smile. But I can tell you that Victor knows how to handle these little problems. The environmental department will soon approve their project, and your concerns are just making mountains out of molehills. These words were like a key, unlocking something in Adrian's mind. He suddenly understood something and nodded. Thank you for your honesty, Natalie. Now I know what to do. Natalie seemed confused by his calm response and frowned. What do you mean? Adrian just smiled, walked to the door, and picked up his car keys. Nothing. I wish you and Victor happiness. Adrian. Natalie's voice revealed uncertainty for the first time. Where are you going? Does it matter? Adrian looked back at her one last time. You've made your choice. Then, under Natalie's surprised gaze, he calmly left the home they had shared for 3 years, as if just going out for coffee. No arguments, no pleading, not even displays of anger. Just leaving. In the night, Adrian drove toward the beach, already formulating a plan in his mind. Natalie and Victor's betrayal would not just be a matter of personal emotions. It could be related to a larger environmental crisis. And Adrian, as someone who had always been dedicated to protecting the ocean, knew he had to do something. As his car disappeared into the night, Natalie stood by the window, feeling a sense of unease creeping up her spine. Adrian's reaction was too calm, unlike someone who had just been betrayed. She picked up her phone, hesitated, then dialed Victor's number. Did everything go smoothly? Victor's deep voice came from the other end. I'm not sure, Natalie replied, her eyes still fixed on the direction Adrian had gone. He knows about us, but his reaction is strange. Don't worry, darling. Victor's tone was full of confidence. What can he do? Besides, all our friends are on your side. If he makes a scene, He'll just look like a poor loser who can't accept defeat. Natalie nodded, trying to convince herself. But Adrian's final expression and question left her unsettled. She vaguely felt that things might not be as simple as she imagined. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains into the room, and Natalie opened her eyes, feeling a slight headache. She had spent the night in Victor's luxurious apartment, celebrating her finally breaking free from that dull relationship. She reached for her phone on the nightstand and saw that the screen showed 33 missed calls. She sat up abruptly, thinking it might be Adrian frantically trying to reach her. But when she unlocked the screen, she found these calls came from various people: her boss, colleagues, several clients, and even Victor's company's legal counsel. There were countless text messages and social media notifications as well. "What's going on?" she murmured, her fingers trembling as she opened the first message. It was from her assistant. "Natalie, big trouble. Have you seen the news? About Apex. The boss is looking for you like crazy." Natalie's heart raced as she quickly opened a news app. The headline was stark: "Well-known developer suspected of environmental fraud, Golden Beach project halted." The article detailed how Apex Real Estate had falsified environmental impact assessment data, concealing the serious damage the project would cause to the coastline and marine ecosystem. More shockingly, the report mentioned inside information provided by a whistleblower, including key evidence of deliberately ignored red tide risk assessments and groundwater contamination data. Natalie's hands began to shake. These were exactly the information she had concealed from the marketing team, data that Victor had asked her to appropriately package. And now, it had all been made public. Just then, her phone rang. It was Victor calling. "Have you seen the news?" His voice was filled with anger and panic. "Someone leaked all the internal documents to the Environmental Bureau and the media. All of them, including those marketing materials you handled." Natalie felt dizzy. "How is that possible? Our systems are secure and—" "It's Adrian," Victor interrupted her. "It must be him. That damn marine engineer. He knows where to look, how to interpret that data." "Impossible," Natalie reflexively protested. "He only found out about us last night. He couldn't possibly in one night. He's known for a while." Victor shouted. "And you, what did you tell him? About the project?" Natalie recalled Adrian's strange question before he left last night, and her dismissive answer. A cold fear swept through her entire body. "I might have mentioned something about the environmental department," she admitted with difficulty. Heavy breathing came from the other end of the phone. "Do you know what this means? We could face criminal investigation. The stock has already plummeted 20%. We can fix this, right?" Natalie struggled to remain calm. "You have connections, the best legal team." A terrible silence followed. "We?" Victor finally sneered. "Natalie, you're so naive. The company needs a scapegoat, and you, as the marketing director responsible for packaging this false information, are the perfect candidate." "What?" Natalie cried in disbelief. "But this was what you asked me to do. All the decisions were yours. Is there any evidence?" Victor coldly interrupted her. "All emails were encrypted, meetings were held in private. And you, my dear, your signature is on all those beautiful promotional materials." Natalie felt sick. "You can't do this to me, Victor." We what?" Victor laughed mockingly. "Natalie, you betrayed your fiancé to be with me. Do you really think I would be loyal to you? Business is like warfare, darling. There are no permanent allies, only permanent interests." The call suddenly ended, leaving Natalie alone in the luxurious bedroom, everything around her suddenly seeming so foreign and cold. Her phone continued to ring frantically, but she had no strength to answer. She slowly walked to the window, looking at Miami's skyline. Yesterday, it had been a symbol of her ambition and desire. Today, it had become a terrifying trap. Natalie remembered Adrian's final calm smile and his words. "Now I know what to do." He had planned everything, while she, arrogantly believing he was powerless to resist or retaliate, had overlooked how his professional knowledge and dedication to environmental protection could become the most terrible weapon. She picked up her phone and dialed Adrian's number, but the call went straight to voicemail. After a brief tone, she heard Adrian's familiar, calm voice. "Hello. I can't take your call right now. For environmental matters, please contact the Coastal Protection Research Center. For anything else, please leave a message after the beep." The beep sounded, and Natalie opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. Apologize? Plead? Threaten? In the end, she just silently hung up. Outside, Miami's sunshine remained brilliant, the sea sparkling, everything as usual. But for Natalie, her world had been turned upside down in just one night. Part 2. Deep Sea Counterattack. Adrian parked his car in front of a small beachfront villa, a haven he had purchased years ago from a retired marine biologist. The house wasn't large, but it had an excellent ocean view, surrounded by dense palm trees and native vegetation. Most importantly, hardly anyone knew about it, except for a few of his most trusted friends. He pushed open the door, and the air inside carried a hint of dampness and the scent of wooden furniture. Adrian took a deep breath, feeling a long-absent sense of peace. This was his true home, a place where he didn't need to cater to Natalie's pursuit of a high-end lifestyle. Adrian turned on his computer, connected to a secure server, and began organizing the materials he had collected over the years about Miami coastline development projects. As an experienced marine engineer, he had participated in countless environmental impact assessments and knew the local ecosystem like the back of his hand. More importantly, he knew how to identify beautified environmental data. "Let's see what you've been hiding, Victor Reinhardt," Adrian muttered to himself, his eyes fixed on the screen. For the past few months, he had been uneasy about the Golden Beach project but lacked concrete evidence. Now, with the information Natalie had inadvertently revealed, he knew where to start looking. He contacted several colleagues who were also concerned about this matter, including Thomas and a few old friends at the Environmental Bureau. At 3 in the morning, Adrian finally found the evidence he needed. Apex's submitted environmental assessment report contained serious fraud. They deliberately underestimated the project's impact on coral reefs, concealed the risk of red tide that construction might trigger, and even tampered with groundwater contamination test data. More shockingly, Adrian discovered that Natalie had personally participated in packaging and disseminating this information. Her team created beautiful promotional materials, claiming the project was an environmental pioneer, even using some of Adrian's own research data as endorsement while completely distorting its conclusions. How ironic. Adrian shook his head with a bitter smile. "I study the ocean to protect it, while she uses my work to destroy it." He organized all the evidence, wrote a detailed report, and attached technical analyses and original data comparisons. Then he sent emails to several key figures: the enforcement director at the Environmental Bureau, several influential environmental journalists, government officials responsible for oversight, and some investor protection organizations. After sending the emails, Adrian walked to the balcony and looked at the brightening eastern sky. He knew that once the sun rose, the storm would come. He felt no guilt for his actions. This wasn't just a response to personal betrayal, but his duty as an environmental worker. "I need a real man." Adrian repeated Natalie's words softly, laughing bitterly. "Perhaps you'll soon find out what truly responsible behavior is." As Adrian had anticipated, the storm came swiftly and violently. At 8 in the morning, the first news report appeared on the local major media websites, and by 9, national media began to follow up. The headlines invariably focused on Apex's environmental fraud and possible government investigation. Adrian's phone kept vibrating, but he ignored it. He knew those were messages from colleagues and friends, possibly calls from Natalie and others. But now, he needed to stay calm and execute the next step of his plan. He drove to the institute, listening to news reports on the radio along the way. When he arrived at his office, the entire research center was already buzzing. "Adrian." Thomas rushed over as soon as he saw him. "My God, have you seen the news? Apex is finished. The Environmental Bureau has halted the Golden Beach project, and their stock has plummeted by over 20%. Adrian calmly nodded. "I've seen it." Thomas stared at him for a few seconds, suddenly realizing something. "It was you, wasn't it? Those leaked documents and analyses." Adrian didn't answer directly, just smiled slightly. "I only did what I had to do." "But wait, doesn't Natalie work at that real estate company?" "Oh God, is she?" Thomas's expression changed from excitement to concern. "She's the marketing director at Apex, responsible for packaging that false information," Adrian said flatly, not revealing the change in their relationship. "Now, we have more important work to do." He walked toward his office, leaving a confused Thomas behind. Adrian knew what would happen next: investigations, inquiries, possibly legal proceedings. But he was prepared. As a whistleblower, he had sufficient protection, and all his actions were legal. Meanwhile, Natalie's world was collapsing. Her phone was almost exploding with calls. Her boss, colleagues, media reporters, even lawyers, all trying to contact her. Worse still, Victor had completely cut off contact with her, and his legal team had already begun shifting all responsibility to the marketing department, claiming they had oversold the project information while senior management was completely unaware. "This is impossible," Natalie shouted angrily in the conference room, facing the company's legal team. All decisions were personally approved by Victor. He knew every detail. The chief legal counsel, David, looked at her coldly. "Do you have written evidence, Ms. Mitchell? Any emails or documents where Mr. Victor explicitly instructed you to conceal environmental risks?" Natalie was speechless. Of course not. Victor was shrewd enough never to leave such traces in written records. All sensitive instructions were given in private meetings or informal settings. "We've prepared a statement," David continued, pushing a document across to her. "The company will express shock and regret over the marketing department's unauthorized exaggerated promotion and promise full cooperation with the investigation." Natalie looked at the document in disbelief. "You want me to be the scapegoat? We call it crisis management, Ms. Mitchell," David said coldly. "Sign it, or the company will file a lawsuit regarding your personal dereliction of duty." Natalie felt dizzy. Just 24 hours ago, she was a promising executive with an admirable fiancé and a charming lover. Now, she was about to lose everything. She tremblingly picked up the pen, but just before signing, she remembered Adrian's words and his final look. Suddenly, a stubborn emotion welled up inside her. "No." She put down the pen and stood up. "I won't sign this. If Victor wants to throw me under the bus, he'd better be prepared to go to hell with me." David narrowed his eyes. "You're threatening a multi-billion-dollar corporation, Ms. Mitchell. That's not wise." "Is that so?" Natalie suddenly smiled, a strange sense of relief washing over her. "Tell Victor the first have my own evidence. Maybe not in writing, but enough to keep him up at night." She turned and left the conference room, her heart pounding like a drum. This was a high-stakes gamble. She didn't actually have any substantial evidence. But at this moment, she would rather fight to the end than become a pawn to be discarded at will. In the days that followed, Miami's business and environmental circles were thrown into massive turmoil. Apex Real Estate's stock price continued to plummet. Investors withdrew in droves, and environmental groups held protest activities at the Golden Beach Project site. Worse still, regulatory departments in other cities also began re-examining Apex's projects, resulting in multiple under-construction projects being suspended. However, Adrian, the central figure in this storm, remained unusually calm. He continued his normal work, declined any media interviews, and only provided technical support to official investigators when necessary. To the outside world, he was just a diligent environmental worker, not someone seeking revenge for betrayal. Thomas remained confused by Adrian's calm reaction. "You're really this calm?" "I mean, if my ex-fiancé, Adrian corrected, continuing to study the coral sample under the microscope. "Right, sorry. If my ex-fiancé betrayed me and was involved in environmental fraud, I'd probably go crazy." Adrian looked up at his friend. "What good would going crazy do? What matters is taking effective action." He paused. "By the way, didn't you all used to really like Natalie and her high-end friends?" Thomas awkwardly averted his gaze. "Well, I mean, yes, she was charming, and those parties were definitely great. But that doesn't mean we were on her side. When I found out there was a problem between you two, I immediately sent you those photos, didn't I?" Adrian just nodded, not pursuing the matter further. In his view, these so-called friends were simply adjusting their positions after the wind had changed. What truly disappointed him was how easily they had been attracted by surface glamour in the first place. On the fifth day, an unexpected visitor came to the institute. "Is Adrian Parker here?" A voice sounded at the front desk. Adrian was organizing some files when he heard his name and looked up. Standing there was a middle-aged man, dressed in a well-tailored suit, with a serious expression. "I'm Marcus Reynolds, a representative of the Investor Rights Protection Association." The man introduced himself. "Do you have a moment to talk?" Adrian gestured for him to enter his office and closed the door. "I represent a group of Apex real estate investors. Marcus got straight to the point. We're filing a class action lawsuit against the company's management, accusing them of deliberately concealing environmental risks, resulting in significant shareholder losses. Adrian nodded. So, we need more internal evidence. Marcus looked him directly in the eyes. We know you're the whistleblower, and we're also aware that you have a personal relationship with Apex's marketing director, Natalie Mitchell. Adrian's expression remained unchanged. Ex-fiancé. Yes, I apologize, Marcus continued. We hope you can provide more information, especially regarding the direct involvement of senior management, particularly Victor Reinhardt. Adrian considered for a moment. I can only provide the environmental data and scientific analyses I know. As for the company's internal decision chain and attribution of responsibility, I suggest you contact Ms. Mitchell. Marcus revealed a slight smile. We've already tried, but she refuses to cooperate unless she can obtain some form of protection. That's your problem, not mine, Adrian said calmly. Mr. Parker, Marcus's tone became more serious. If Reinhardt escapes, he'll soon rise again. Are you sure that's the outcome you want? Adrian stood up, indicating the conversation was over. I did all this to protect the marine environment, Mr. Reynolds, not for personal revenge. As for Natalie and Victor's fate, that's the result of their own choices. Marcus looked at him, slowly nodding. I understand. However, if you change your mind, here's my card. After seeing Marcus off, Adrian returned to the window, looking at the distant sea. He had told the truth. This wasn't about revenge, but about justice and responsibility. Letting Natalie and Victor face the consequences of their actions was more powerful than any deliberate retaliation. 2 days later, Natalie finally found Adrian. She looked exhausted, with obvious dark circles under her eyes, her once meticulously styled hair now messily tied back. She stood at the door of the beach villa, uncertainly ringing the doorbell. Adrian opened the door, not surprised to see her standing there. He knew this day would come sooner or later. May I come in? Natalie asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. Adrian stepped aside to let her enter, but didn't offer any invitation for drinks or seating. He just stood there, waiting for her to speak. I was fired, Natalie finally said. Not just that, I might face criminal charges. Victor pushed all the responsibility onto me. Adrian showed no sympathy. I guess that's what a real man would do. Natalie flinched, but didn't argue. I deserve it. I hurt you, betrayed you, then mocked you. Now I've lost everything. Job, reputation, friends. She looked up, tears in her eyes. I might even lose my freedom. So why are you here? Adrian asked, his voice calm but cold. I don't know, Natalie answered honestly. Maybe to apologize, maybe to seek advice, maybe just to see you one last time. Apology accepted. As for advice, I suggest you find a good lawyer, Adrian said. Natalie bit her lip. The Investor Rights Protection Association contacted me, saying if I testify against Victor, they can help me get a lighter sentence. Do you think I should do that? That's entirely up to you, Natalie, Adrian frowned. Why are you asking me this? Because I don't know who to trust anymore, she said softly. Everyone has their own agenda. Victor abandoned me, my friends won't take my calls. Lawyers only care about their bills. She paused. And you, despite how I hurt you, have always remained honest. Adrian took a deep breath, struggling to stay calm. Natalie, I'm not your advisor, much less your savior. The situation you're facing now is the result of your own choices. As an adult, you need to take responsibility for your decisions. Natalie nodded, tears beginning to fall. I know. I messed everything up, Adrian. I thought what I wanted was money and status, but I was wrong. What I've lost isn't just you, but myself. Adrian looked at this once invincibly confident woman, now so vulnerable and lost. He felt a complex emotion, not satisfaction, not pity, but a deep weariness. Why, Natalie? He finally asked the question that had been troubling him. We were together for 5 years. We had plans, commitments. Did all of this really mean nothing to you? Natalie wiped away her tears. No, it meant something, but I lost my way. When Victor appeared, he represented everything I felt was missing: excitement, recognition, a feeling of conquering the world. She gave a bitter smile. How ironic that I thought you were too ordinary, when in fact I was too shallow. Adrian nodded but didn't comfort her. These explanations came too late and couldn't repair the damage already done. You should go, he finally said. I hope you find your own path, Natalie. Really. But that path won't have me walking alongside you. Natalie looked at him deeply, seeming to want to say something, but in the end just nodded. She turned toward the door, looking back one last time before leaving. You know what, Adrian? You were wrong about one thing. What? You said this wasn't about revenge. Her voice was soft yet firm. But this is the most perfect revenge, letting me see with my own eyes what I've lost, experiencing the feeling of being betrayed and abandoned. You defeated all of us with truth and justice. With that, she left, her silhouette gradually disappearing in the sunset. Adrian stood in place for a long time, lost in thought. Perhaps Natalie was right. Perhaps this was indeed a form of revenge. But the difference was that this revenge wasn't achieved by hurting her, but by adhering to truth and principles. A month later, the storm finally calmed somewhat. Apex Real Estate was forced to pay huge fines and abandon the Golden Beach project. Victor Reinhardt, though avoiding criminal charges, saw his reputation severely damaged, with multiple boards demanding his resignation. Natalie accepted a plea agreement, avoiding imprisonment but required to pay fines and perform community service. More importantly, her career in real estate and marketing was essentially over. Adrian's institute gained more attention and support because of this incident, and his environmental work received wider recognition. Thomas and other friends tried to re-establish close relationships with him, but Adrian maintained a polite distance. One evening, Adrian sat alone on the balcony of his beach villa, gazing at the stars and the sea. His phone rang with a text message from an unknown number. I've taken a job with a small environmental organization in the Florida Keys. Not for redemption, just finally found something meaningful. Thanks for the lesson, though the method was cruel. Take care, Anne. Adrian read the message but didn't reply, just putting the phone back in his pocket. He didn't hate Natalie, nor did he forgive her. She was just a passerby in his life, a lesson, reminding him of what truly matters. In the distance, waves crashed against the rocks on the shore, producing rhythmic sounds. Adrian closed his eyes, feeling the slightly salty sea breeze caress his face. This was his true home, his true love, the azure ocean, the solid earth, and the relentless pursuit of truth and justice. He didn't need Natalie's so-called real man standards, money, power, appearance. Because he possessed more important things, principles, courage, and the ability to live as his authentic self. Under the starry sky, Adrian smiled slightly. The storm had passed, and the sea returned to calm. But he knew that beneath the surface, undercurrents always exist, changing everything, shaping the future. Just like his revenge, quiet and profound, not through violence and hatred, but through the power of truth and time, making everyone face their own choices and actions. This might not be a fairy tale ending, but it was real. In life's ocean, there are neither eternal clear skies nor endless storms. Only those who learn to navigate the undercurrents can find their own direction. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.